Hey guys, I just wanted to make a video showing off these two cameras. I've got a 35mm SLR and a DSLR, digital SLR. And really this one's just for fun. Obviously it uses film, and so I don't use it very often, but I have used it a few times, both with black and white film and with color film. This is a Ricoh KR-5. This is from the late 70s, and apparently in the 80s this was a very popular camera with like school boards, students that were learning photography. I think the main reason for that is because it's got a pretty neat feature where in the viewfinder there's actually a little target that, based on your film ISO and your shutter speed, the target will move. And then as you adjust the f-stop, or how much light's coming in the lens, this little needle will move, and you've got to get the needle in the target, and that lets you know that your exposure is right. I got to assume in the late 70s that was a fairly unique feature, although I could be wrong. Maybe most high-end SLRs had that back then, but I don't think this was a super high-end model. Again, it was meant, well, it was popular with like high schools for the photography classes. It's very similar to the cameras that I used when I was in high school taking photography. It's a fixed focal length. You got your focus ring on the front of the lens, and your f-stop, your aperture setting there at the back of the lens. You got your shutter speed. Other than that, it just works. It's in very, very good shape. I bought it off of a collector who, he had a lot of cameras in display cabinets, and they're all in really good shape. So yeah, I've used it a few times with both black and white film and with color film. And actually the first time I took it out was with black and white film, and I bought these filters. So this was like a cheap pack off Amazon, but it's got a red, a green, and a blue filter. And what I did was I put the camera on a tripod, and I took 3 pictures of the same scene with the red filter on, with the blue filter on, and then with the green filter on. And what happens is you end up with 3 black and white photos, because of course it's black and white film, but the different areas of exposure is based on how much red light came through when you had the red filter on, etc. And then you can use software to take those 3 black and white images with the different colors exposed in different areas, and you can actually turn it into a color photo. So yeah, that was really cool. I couldn't believe how well those turned out. And then I took it out when I went to Boston. I went to Boston last summer. The composition might not be the best, but it's amazing how much detail is in that. I mean, this old camera on just cheap Kodak, like the cheapest color 35mm film that you can actually still buy, and they looked surprisingly good. So again, it's just for fun with this one. Obviously, having to get film developed and all that, it's not something I'm going to do very often, but it is cool to have this thing, and again, in such good shape. Yeah, it was definitely worth picking up. I think I only paid like $60 for it. Knowing it was from a collector and it was in such good shape, it seemed pretty good. And then we have the DSLR. It's a Nikon D3300. So I've had this for a little while. I think I used it to record one of my videos. It does take way better video than my phone, but to be honest, I'm lazy, and the phone is easy. I usually have the phone on me. It's usually charged and ready to go. And, it's a lot easier to throw on a tripod. Despite the fact I shouldn't even say probably, this definitely takes better quality video than my phone. I still end up using the phone. I'm just lazy, and that's that. But I do take this out definitely sometimes to take pictures. I've taken a lot of nice photos with this, some that were so nice I printed out. I bought this used as well. I think I paid about $250. That's Canadian. I'm in Canada, so the stock lens is an 18 to 55mm focal length. Pretty standard for your stock lens. It's got the the VR, or the vibration reduction, and yeah, pretty typical stock kind of kit lens. I also bought this lens used. I believe I paid $150. Again, $150 Canadian for this lens. And this one's almost like the perfect next lens to get, because this one's 18 to 55. This one starts off where this one ends, so this one is 55 to 200. Obviously with 200 millimeter focal length, I can reach out a little bit further, get closer to, wildlife. I've used this to get, birds and squirrels. I got some pretty cool pictures with this. And actually went to the airport one day. We had an air show one weekend, and there was a B-52 that wasn't flying at the air show, but it was coming to the air show to be a static display. And so I went to the airport the day before the air show when the B-52 was landing, and I waited to see the B-52. I'm a big fan of the B-52, and I've seen one in person in a museum, but I've never seen one flying. So yeah, that was when I just got this camera, and so it was basically it was literally the day I got this camera, actually. And so I had no idea what I was doing. I left it on auto with the flash off, yeah, just stuck this on and got some decent pictures, I guess, considering. Now that I've learned the camera, I generally keep it in either aperture priority or maybe shutter priority if I'm trying to get like a fast-moving bird. Probably with the planes, that would have been a good idea. But I usually have it in aperture priority, and it's when I like using this camera. Is when I want the the short depth of field, that kind of nice look with the blurred background separating the foreground. Yeah, it does a pretty good job for picking this up for $250. And again, this one's in mint condition, pretty much. It was kind of a cheap way to get into a DSLR. And it's almost funny that it took me this long to buy a DSLR. I like the idea of having full control if I want to do manual focus, and I want to pick my aperture size, to pick the depth of field. I like having that control, and I like having a good optical zoom, something I can get, closer to wildlife or airplanes with. And so I almost waited too long. I should have really jumped on this bandwagon a lot earlier, because I do like going out with these and taking pictures. And again, you can do it on the cheap, $250 here, $150 there, and you're pretty much set. I got a 32 gig SanDisk memory card in there that was, I don't know, $15 or something. You really don't need a lot of money to get started. And yeah, I take all my images in RAW, and I use a free program called Raw Therapy to do the editing with. So there's even good free software out there. Obviously GIMP is your alternative to Photoshop, but Raw Therapy is kind of your alternative to Lightroom. So instead of spending, I don't even know how much Lightroom costs, but Raw Therapy is free, so it works for me.